and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have another book review for you, and that is for Nightshade Unicorn Book 1 Forerunner by T.S. Pedramon. This is a self-published young adult fantasy book, the first book in the series, and I think a debut novel as far as I'm aware, though I may be incorrect on that, but I think it's a debut novel. And this book was sent to me to review by the author, so thank you to T.S. Pedramon for sending this book to me. This is actually the first book that I've ever been sent by an author, which is kind of fun. So I was really curious to check it out because I have not read a lot of self-published fantasy before. I haven't read a whole lot of specifically unicorn-related fantasy before. In fact, I think the only time I've ever read anything really unicorn-related was back in elementary school. My teacher was reading the class some unicorn book. I can't even remember what it was. So it was something a little different. I thought it would be a lot of fun, and all that kind of thing. And so I did enjoy this book a decent amount. I have some things here and there that I think could have been a little better, but in general I did really enjoy this book quite a bit. So to get into some good stuff with this book, of which I think there's quite a few things to talk about, first of all, I like the premise of this book. It's pretty simple, it's pretty tropey, I guess, but I think that it works well, which is essentially you have this main character named Alavba, I believe is maybe how that's pronounced. Small town kind of character, gets sent on this big quest because they're going to be the big protagonist of the series and things like that. She is guided by this unicorn, or this nomord, which is kind of the name of the unicorns in this series. Unicorn is seen in this world as kind of a derogatory term for the nomord. But she is guided by one named Pedramon, who basically tells her that she needs to go on this journey with him in order to achieve this goal that will kind of set things in motion in order to save the world and things of that nature. Kind of fairly tropey kind of introduction to the story, but it's one that I think works. I think there's enough kind of variation in it. You know, there are a few different tropes at work here, and tropes themselves are not bad by any means. But you have like I kind of think of Pedramon as almost filling like the wise wizard trope, except he's a unicorn, so that's just cool. And then, you know, so all these kinds of things, and I think it works well together. Very nicely kind of gets you started getting into the story. So I liked that, and I liked the setup for this book. I also really enjoyed some of the world building. There is a decent amount of it. There's some like literal world building, but I especially enjoyed some of the lore in the world building type things. So talking about the history of like the nomord and their role in the world and things like that, and talking about you know, these different figures within the history of the world that are important, which I rather enjoyed as well. I also think that the pacing of this book was pretty good. It's kind of like it's almost like a travel log in that, you know, they start at one point and they have to go to this place. And so it is in that way kind of a travel log, but I didn't find it really boring because there's always something going on along the way. You know, there are different things that interrupt the journey or things that happen. You know, Alavba comes across like some other travelers, or she stops in a town, or runs into some unsavory individuals or things like that. You know, different things that happen that kind of keep things interesting as the book goes along, so it's not just them traveling the whole way and nothing interesting happens, which I enjoyed. It kept things going at a nice pace where it was still entertaining to read, rather than feeling like it was kind of a slog of like, you know, a travel log that was just kind of boring or whatever, which I did like about it. I think that was something that was well done here. I also really liked the end of this book, which obviously I'm not going to talk about in this review specifically how the book ended, but the ending of this book had some twists and turns to it that I did not expect going in. There were just certain things that happened at the end of this book that kind of took me by surprise, which I really enjoyed. And the ending in general I think was well done. In fact, the last one or two chapters of this book were probably my favorite part of the book. I think the ending in general was just very well done, and made me very interested in seeing where things go from here and things like that. So a lot of good stuff with this book. I think that the dialogue also was pretty enjoyable. I liked the characters and their interactions with one another, especially in the town that Alavba is from. with her and her mother and some of the other people in the town I enjoyed. I enjoyed her interactions with Pedramon. That was pretty fun. And just kind of the dynamic that they have together, because they're two obviously very different people. And the dynamic they had, I think, was quite entertaining, and some of the other characters as well I did enjoy throughout the book. As far as negative points with this book, I do have a couple things, which are mainly more so, I think, on the writing side. I don't really have any issues with, like, you know, the entertainment factor of this book. I think this book was very entertaining throughout and things like that. Don't really have any issues with, like, the story, anything. But there are a couple things in terms of the writing. I did think, even though I enjoyed quite a bit of the dialogue, it felt a little stiff at times. I think that the dialogue, like, just reading it sometimes felt like it wasn't quite natural feeling, which again is kind of more on the writing side. And also I think the world building, which while I enjoyed the world building, there were times where to me it felt not quite info dumpy, because to me when I think info dump, I think everything in the story stops and they just spend like 5 pages or something just telling you this whole big world building thing. That never happened in this book, and all the world building kind of happened along the way, which I did appreciate. But there are times where I think it kind of tends in that direction a little bit, where it feels like they're just kind of having, like, it happens in dialogue, so I think it works, but there's times where it feels like it's a little bit too, like, unnaturally, like, oh, here's some bit about the world, which, even though it's relevant to the story and to the discussion that's happening, it just feels a little weird to me. But those really are the only major things in this book that I think were downsides, and even then they weren't major. I just think they were, you know, just things that in terms of the writing could have been a little bit better, but I think as they were fine. And I didn't really detract from my enjoyment of the book all that much. I still found it very entertaining. I still had a good time with it, which ultimately to me is the thing that matters the most. I had a very fun time with this book. It was very enjoyable to read. I was very entertained throughout the whole thing. I always looked forward to reading more of it, and all that kind of thing. And like I said, to me, that's the thing that matters most. So overall, I rather enjoyed this one. Looking forward to seeing where things go from here. This is intended to be a series. In fact, book 2 just got announced quite recently, and is coming out, I believe, in October, which is very exciting. So I may be able to check that out sometime in the future, and all that kind of thing. So overall, a solid book. I would highly recommend going and checking it out if it sounds interesting to you. If you're like me and haven't read a whole lot of unicorn-related books recently, this might be a good one to check out, because I think it handles things like that pretty well. It was really cool, kind of the unicorn lore and things like that, and it was something a little different for me, which I appreciated. So as far as a rating, out of 10 that I would give Forerunner, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. Very solid, very entertaining, enjoyed it quite a bit. Had a couple, you know, small issues here and there, I think, but generally was a very enjoyable book that I had a good time with. So that is pretty much it for my review. Let me know in the comments if you have read this book before and what you thought of it, or if you haven't read this book, let me know if you're interested in checking it out. And that's pretty much it for this review, so thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.